Coders, this is Jared from Renaissance Coders, and today we're going to learn about data types in JavaScript. There are a few different qualifications of data types, including primary data types, composite data types, and special data types. The primary or primitive data types are comprised of strings, numbers, and booleans. The composite or reference data types are comprised of objects and arrays, and the special data types are comprised of null and undefined. The string data type is any amount of text that you want to be included from one character to an entire paragraph. Strings are created by placing text or numbers inside of quotations. You can use double quotes or single quotes to create a string. JavaScript does not have a data type for a single character. If you want to store a single character in a variable, all you have to do is create a variable that contains that character. Okay, that is a pretty basic introduction to JavaScript strings, so let's move on to the numbers data type. JavaScript considers integers and floating point values both numbers. As an example, you can create a variable myInt and set it equal to 10. You can also create a variable myFloat and set it equal to 10.5. In JavaScript, both of these variables are considered to be of the number data type. Strongly typed languages would require a distinction between the myInt and myFloat variables, but JavaScript will work with these values just like they are. There's a lot more to cover with JavaScript numbers than we can fit into this tutorial, but we will do an entire tutorial dedicated to numbers in the future, so keep an eye open for that. JavaScript does have several special values for numbers that include positive infinity, negative infinity, positive and negative 0, and NaN, or not a number. Positive infinity occurs when a number is too large to be represented in JavaScript. The same is true for negative infinity. Not a number is used when a mathematical operation is performed on data like strings or undefined values. Okay, let's move on to Boolean data types. The Boolean data type is comprised of only two values, true and false. Booleans are often used in conditional statements like if-else statements to do something if the condition is true or do something else if the value is false. Let's create a quick example of this. We're going to create a variable to test against called x. Now let's set our value of x to 10. Next we create our if-else statement. Essentially what we're going to do here is say if x is equal to 10, then we're going to console.log, yep, this is equal to 10. If x is not equal to 10, then we're going to set x equal to 10. So what is this if-else statement actually doing? The if portion is simply checking to see if x is equal to 10, and if it is, then we are logging our statement. If x is not equal to 10, then our else statement is setting x to 10. Okay, another way of representing Booleans is actually creating a variable and setting it equal to true or false. Like this, we create a variable called the truth and set it to true. Next, we create a variable called anti-truth and set it to false. Now let's use these variables in an if-else statement. Okay, what we're going to do is say if the truth is equal to false, console.log, we have no truth. Else, console.log, the truth is here. So essentially what we're doing here is just outputting a statement based on the validity of the conditional inside of the if-else statement. Okay, that covers the basic usage of Booleans. Now let's take a look at the special data types in JavaScript. The null data type does not contain any valid strings, numbers, booleans, or any other data type. An interesting usage for the null data type is that you can erase a variable's data by setting the variable equal to null, like so. Let's create a variable called test and set it equal to a string of test. Okay, our test variable contains a string value of test, but now if we set the variable to null, the test string will be removed from the variable because the variable will now be null. Now let's take a look at the undefined data type. The undefined data type occurs when creating a variable that is not set to a value, or when looking up an object's property that does not exist. Let's create a quick example of this by creating a variable x and not setting it to a value. The x variable will have a data type of undefined because it has not been set, but we can change the data type by setting the variable x to a value at any time. For example, let's now say that x is equal to null. Now x has the data type of null rather than undefined. It is important to note that undefined and null are not equivalent, and that null is not equal to 0, like in some other languages. Here's a quick example. Let's create a quick function with an if-else statement that checks to see if null is equal to undefined. Okay, to do this, we write function dataCheck. And then inside of that function, we're going to say if null is equal to undefined, console.log, these are equal. Else, console.log, these are not equal. Now what do you think will be logged to the console with this function? If you said these are equal, then you are right. Remember that type coercion occurs when using the double equal sign. So if we change the function to use the triple equal sign, what do you think will be output now? That's right. The statement, these are not equal, will be logged to the console. Okay, that is going to do it for our introduction to data types in JavaScript. Next, we're going to cover JavaScript operators, JavaScript functions, and JavaScript objects. So be sure to subscribe, and as always, thanks for watching. This has been a Renaissance Coders tutorial.